begin step 2, it's important to stress that we are now wearing safety glasses and masks and gloves because last time I got a piece of metal stuck in my eye. So here's the trailer that we stripped down last time. We will build the subfloor into the trailer to save on vertical space because we're limited to 13 feet and 6 inches, and I want as much of that as possible to be wall space and not floor space. So I found a bunch of rigid fiberglass insulation that was left over from a building site, and I got the whole batch for $140. Luckily, the insulation has foil on both sides, which means that I have a built-in weather barrier and radiant heat barrier. So on my trailer, all of the beams are spaced apart differently, so we had to cut the insulation specifically to fit each and every distance. And you can use any kind of sharp knife to cut the insulation, but it was just really faster to use a handsaw. So with the beams being 3 inches tall, the insulation is also 3 inches tall, but it needed to be shaved down just a little bit in order to fit, so we created a notch going down the entire length of the insulation board. So there I am cutting one of the notches. We cut this notch in the insulation so that it can fit into the C-beam because the insulation is slightly too big. So in the trailer it will go, there's a beam shaped like this and it will go like that. And this side doesn't need a notch because the other side that we stick it in is pretty flush. So what we do is we take it, we put it into the trailer. And sometimes we have to chisel off one of the corners so that we can clear the bar, and then we can put it down like that. So there we are doing that, and what we had to do was cut the insulation into segments because we'd have to like push the insulation in and slide it and all sorts of crazy stuff like that. And then we stuff all the little cracks with extra insulation, and we use this nasty stuff to fill in all the holes. And then we can use metal tape, which is really awesome, to just seal it all up. So all of this is being done to increase the R value of my floor. R value is a measure of thermal resistance, so that's how well a material resists the convection of heat. And thermal resistance depends on the transfer of heat per unit time, and that's our little physics lesson for the day. And after we have all the insulation fitted in, we put our 2x4s lining the whole trailer, and my dad used an impact screwdriver to drill a hole through the metal and through the wood, and we used a screw to screw it down. So with these 2x4s sticking up, we had some extra space to stick more insulation, so we bought these $12 fiberglass insulation bats and rolled them down in between, cut it off at the end. And then it actually turned out they were too poofy and we couldn't fit the plywood on top, so we went back and ripped half of it off to make it thinner. And then after that we were able to put the plywood down, and you can see my dad plop it down. We line it up exactly to the exact centimeter so that it's centered on the trailer, and you fit the tongue and grooves together. I ended up buying all of the plywood and the 2x4s brand new just because used plywood or 2x4s could have warping or kind of be bent, and I needed to be exactly pin straight. So we kept in mind that underneath we have the 2x4s, we had that measured out, and we put a chalk line over each and every one so that we could go up and drill in our plywood so that it would stay down to the trailer. So now the subfloor is done except for the part on the gooseneck, and soon we'll be able to put up the sips.